Good day everyone. So for today's we will discuss the act of declaration of the Philippine independence by Ambrosio Rianzales Bautista. But before that is let me introduce myself. So my name is Steve Animos and I'll be the one to discuss this topic. Now is we will discuss the background of the author. So magandang araw sa inyong lahat at ang tatalakayin ko ay ang background ng may akda na si Ambrosio Rianzales Bautista. So siya ay pinanganak noong Disyembre 7, 1830 sa Binyan, Laguna. Isa rin siya malayong kamag-anak ng pamilya Rizal. At nakilala siya ng mga magsasaka at manggagawa sa tawag na Don Bosyong. So, nag-aaral siya ng abogasya sa University of Santo Tomas at nagtapos noong 1865. At pagkatapos nito, naging abogado siya sa Maynila at tumulong sa mahihirap sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng libreng serbisyong legal. Next is si Ambrosio Rianzales Bautista ay mahalagang tao sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas dahil sa kanyang ambag sa bayan at sa pagtulong niya sa mga kapwa natin Pilipino. So magandang araw sa inyong lahat at ang tatalakayin ko ay ang background ng may akda na si Ambrosio Rianzales Bautista. So siya ay pinanganak noong Disyembre 7, 1830 sa Binyan, Laguna. Isa rin siya malayong kamag-anak ng pamilya Rizal. At nakilala siya ng mga magsasaka at manggagawa sa tawag na Don Bosyong. So nag-aaral siya ng abogasya sa University of Santo Tomas at nagtapos noong 1865. At pagkatapos nito, naging abogado siya sa Maynila at tumulong sa mahihirap sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng libreng serbisyong legal. Next is si Ambrosio Rianzales Bautista ay mahalagang tao sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas dahil sa kanyang ambag sa bayan at sa pagtulong niya sa mga kapwa natin Pilipino. Bukod sa pagiging abogado, si Ambrosio Bautista ay naging isa rin sa mga opisyal ng La Liga Pilipina. At isa rin siya sa mga sumulat ng mga artikulo para sa pahayag ng La Independencia. Next, at noong sumiklab ang Rebolusyong Pilipino, siya ay inaresto at ikinulong ng mga Espanyol dahil sa kanyang pakikilahok sa kilusan. So alam naman natin lahat na bawal at mahigpit na ipinagbabawal ng mga Espanyol ang pakikilahok sa mga iba't ibang kilusan laban sa Espanya. Next ay naging tagapagpayo rin siya ni Emilio Aguinaldo at hinirang bilang Auditor General de Guerra. Isa sa pinakamalagang ambag niya sa kasaysayan ay ang pagbasa ng proklamasyon at kalayaan ng Pilipinas noong Hunyo 12, 1898 sa Kawit, Cavite sa pamumuno ni General Emilio Aguinaldo. Dahil dito kinilala si Ambrosio Bautista bilang mahalagang bahagi ng pagkikibaka ng mga Pilipino para sa ating kalayaan. At kalaunan si Ambrosio Rianzales Bautista ay naging ikalawang pangulo ng Malolos Congress. At pagkatapos ng Philippine-American War, siya ay hinirang bilang hukom ng Court of First Instance sa Pangasinan. Habang siya ay nagsasanay bilang abogado at pagpunta sa Malolos, Bulacan, siya ay nahuli ng isang grupo ng mga bandido. Ngunit nang malaman ng mga ito na marami na pala siyang natulungan bilang tagapagtanggol ng mahirap laban sa mga mayayamang Pilipino at mga Espanyol, humingi sila ng tawad at siya ay pinalaya. Next, at ipinakita ng pangyayaring ito kung gaano siya iginalang at minahal ng mga karaniwang mamamayan. At namatay si Ambrosio Rianzales Bautista noong Disyembre 1903 matapos siyang mahulog mula sa isang karwaheng hinihila ng kabayo sa edad na 72.
So hi everyone, I'm going to discuss about the restating era of Spanish dominion. So let's proceed to the next slide. So the first one is the arrival of Ferdinand Magellan in Cebu City, Philippines in the year of April 7, 1521, and he became friends with the local leader, which is a chief Tupas, so they could live on the islands peacefully. Later on, Magellan was killed in a battle after picking a fight with Chief Kalipulaco, or better known as Lapu-Lapu. So the reason why, because Lapu-Lapu suspected Magellan had an evil designs, or what we call bad intention. So to protect the region, Lapu-Lapu even had a blood compact with the chief of Bohol to stop the Spanish from taking over. And lastly, Lapu-Lapu stopped them in Mactan, and Chief Tupas wouldn't let them stay in Cebu. The remaining Spanish explorers eventually traveled to Manila.
The Philippines under Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, the Manila has been taken into possession after the blood compact between de Legazpi, Chief Soliman, and Lacandula.
I will no longer read the caption so that our discussion will not become too long. So, let us study the establishment of the Aknabato Republic. The Aknabato Republic of Emilio Aguinaldo decided to start up a revolution government in which he was the leader, so that he could fight back against the oppressions being done by the Spanish people. And this is the Biak na Bato Republic. Why is it called Biak na Bato? Because it was started and was founded in Biak na Bato. The Biak na Bato Republic was a revolutionary government formed during the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule in going back 1897. It showed the Filipinos' efforts to organize a government while continuing their fights for independence. And during this time, Emilio Aguinaldo became the leader of the revolutionary forces. On the other hand, the Spanish government, led by Governor General Fernando Primo de Rivera, tried to suppress the growing revolution. Okay, as the conflict intensified, this named Pedro Paterno acted as mediator between both sides. He proposed a peace agreement known as the Pact of Biak na Bato. Through this agreement, the Spanish government offered reforms and amnesty or pardon to the revolutionaries, while Aguinaldo and other leaders agreed to temporarily go into exile. However, the agreement was not fully successful because the promised reforms were not completely carried out and mistrust remained. Because this peace agreement, the revolution had already started on August 28, 1896, with uprisings in Imus and Cavite Video. The Filipino revolutionaries won early battles, which encouraged nearby provinces such as Bulacan, Laguna, Batangas, Pampanga, Morong, and Bataan to join the movement. The, re- the, re- the revolution Mhm. The revolution also spread to parts of Manila, showing the wide support for independence. Overall, after a long journey, the Filipino revolutionaries won several early battles against Spanish forces, especially in Cavite and nearby provinces. And these victories strengthened their movement and proved the growing power of the Filipino struggle for independence, even though full independence was not yet achieved at that time.
The June 12, 1898 Act of Proclamation of Independence was later modified because of concerns raised by Apolinario Mabini, General Emilio Aguinaldo's chief advisor. The original text, drafted in Kawit, Cavite, contained a passage that placed the newly declared Philippine nation under the protection of the powerful and humanitarian North American nation. Mabini objected to this line, arguing that it compromised true sovereignty and could be interpreted as voluntary submission to American control rather than genuine independence. Upon his insistence, the wording was changed when the proclamation was later ratified in Malolos, Bulacan on August 1, 1898. The revised version removed the reference to U.S. protection, reflecting Mabini's push for an independence that did not rely on foreign patronage and his fear that the original phrasing would weaken the Philippines came to full self-determination.
So now, why July 4 was the Independence Day before? So in 1946, after World War II, the United States granted the Philippines independence and sovereignty. So because of this, July 4 was celebrated as Independence Day before, together with American Independence Day. So however, this seemed to show that our freedom was still tied to America. So in 1964, President Diosdado Macapagal restored June 12 as the official Independence Day through Republic Act 4166. So he did this to show that the true independence of the Philippines began through our own actions and sacrifices, not only because of America. So the decisions to fight for freedom was the result of the severe abuse of the Spaniards and the friars. So the execution of Gomborza and the killing of Dr. Jose Rizal inspired the revolutionaries. So because of their sacrifices, Filipinos gained the courage to fight for the country. So that why June 12 is symbol of our own struggle and the merely a gift from another nation. So today, let's discuss Independence Day or Araw ng Kalayaan. So it is the official celebrations of a country on the day it achieved freedom from the occupations or control of another nations. So for the Philippines, it is the day when we show that we are a free country with our own government, our own laws, and our own identity. So in simple terms, it is the day of remembering the sacrifices of our heroes and the victory of Filipinos in fighting for their rights. So it is not just a simple holiday. It is a symbol of our history, unity, and love for the country. So why June 12 is our Independence Day? So on June 12, 1898, Emilio Aguinaldo declared the independence of the Philippines from Spain. However, this was not recognized by Spain and the United States for two reasons. The first, because of the American occupations after the Spanish-American War. The second is because foreign nations were not yet ready to recognize the Philippines as an independent country. So even though we declared independence, our government remained under foreign control. So now, why July 4 was the Independence Day before? So in 1946, after World War II, the United States granted the Philippines independence and sovereignty. So because of this, July 4 was celebrated as Independence Day before, together with American Independence Day. So however, this seemed to show that our freedom was still tied to America. So in 1964, President Diosdado Macapagal restored June 12 as the official Independence Day through Republic Act 4166. So he did this to show that the true independence of the Philippines began through our own actions and sacrifices, not only because of America. So the decisions to fight for freedom was the result of the severe abuse of the Spaniards and the friars. So the execution of Gomborza and the killing of Dr. Jose Rizal inspired the revolutionaries. So because of their sacrifices, Filipinos gained the courage to fight for the country. So that's why June 12 is symbol of our own struggle and the merely a gift from another nation.
So good day, sir. So today I will going to tackle about my part in this report. So first, in this first slide, it describes a critical turning point in Philippine history. The conflict between the secular clergy and the regular clergy. This specific text refers to the legal and religious dispute that eventually fueled the fire of the Philippine Revolution. First, the core conflict is circularization. In 19th century, there was a major push of circularization. So when we say circular clergy, these were priests who did not belong to the religious order, like the Jesuit and Augustinians, or the secular clergy is the most Filipino priests were secular, or they are the Filipino or the local priest here in the Philippines. So when we say regular clergy, these were the Spanish prayers or priors belonging to established orders. So the issue between these two, the Spanish government began taking rich, established parishes away from the Filipinos' secular priest and giving them back to Spanish prayer. So that is the main issue. And also, in this slide, it also mentioned the parish swap. Yeah, and the conflict exchange involving Mindanao. When the Jesuits were allowed to return in the Philippines, they were given back their mission in Mindanao to compensate or recollect who had been in Mindanao. The Spanish government took the wealth flourished in Cavite and Manila away from the Filipino circular press and handed them to the recollect or the Spanish friars. So why this matters? There's a question there. Why this matters? It matters because it wasn't just about religion. It was about power and racism. The Spanish friar argued that Filipino were unfit were unfit to perish, which deeply insulted and engaged the local synergy. So the Spanish friars kanang lockdown on the Filipinos because they think that the Filipino were unfit to lead parishes, which deeply insult the Filipinos and angered the local clergy, which is the Filipinos. Next is the the legal battle. So this slide also mentioned the appeal in the administrative case. So this refers to the legal effort led by the press, like Jose Burgos, like Father Jose Burgos and the two other priests. They tried to use the law to stop the royal orders that were stripped them up their position. But the council, but the Spanish councils or the Council of the State and Ministers of Foreign Affairs mentioned are the Spanish bureaucratic office. So because the Council of State and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs are the Spanish bureaucratic office, the legal basis which is being processed by the press or by the Gomborza is is have is ultimately lost because of because the justice is under the rule of the Spanish. And lastly, the most important part of this slide is at the end. Cause the growth of the tree of liberty in this our dear land that grow more and more through the iniquitous measure of oppression. So this means that every time the Spanish government oppressed the Filipino press, it backfired. Instead of crushing their spirit, it made Filipino people wanted freedom or liberty even more. So this event is the direct background of 1972 Cavite Munity and the execution of Gomborza, which is the three fathers who fought against freedom in in ano in the Spanish time. So first is the mistreatment. Native priests were treated as second class citizen. Yes, in that time Filipino priest is being treated as second class because the Spanish priests they think that the Filipino priests were not qualified to rule against the parishes. And secondly, the sacrifice. They struggle or the struggle of the three priests or the Gomborza turned into a national movement. Their sacrifice turned to a national movement, and the result, it inspired national heroes like Dr. Jose Rizal to eventually fight for the independence of the Philippines. So essentially, this slide explained that revolution did not just start because people wanted to fight. Okay? It started because the Spanish legal and religious system were geared against Philippines. So in this slide, we will see the legal transition of the outward outbreaks of the Philippine Revolution and the establishment of the Filipino-led government. So in the first paragraph, describe the transition from suffering to action. So the first spark is in Caloocan. So this refers to the cry of Pugadlawin in Balintawak in August 1896. This was when the Katipunan, led by Andres Bonifacio, tore up their cedulas or their tax certificates to signal that they no longer recognize Spanish authority, or they do not want to be under again in the Spanish authority. And in this slide also we can see a one-sided battle. So it is a very harsh reality for the Filipino people because in that time the Filipino people were fighting a superior force. The Spanish army had modern rifle and cannons, while the Filipino mostly had bulo, sharpened bamboos, and arrows. That is the one, or that is only the Filipino people using in the battle. And also, it is very, the Filipino people is, they tend to fight because they are not only fighting for themselves, they are fighting for the freedom of the revolution of the Philippine. So that's why though they have only using bolo, sharpened bamboos and arrows, they still fighting because they want to have a freedom. So also in this slide, in the second bullet, pointed out or pointed mark a shift in leadership and the formalization of the new government. The famous dictator Don Emilio Aguinaldo. While dictators sound very negative today in our time, but in the time of the Philippine Revolution, it was a specific title used during the dictatorial government established in May 1898. This was a temporary government meant to lead the country during the final stage of the war against Spanish. So centralization and power. By conferring all power to Emilio Aguinaldo to Aguinaldo, the revolutionaries were trying to create a unified command. They needed a single leader to make quick decisions. So that's why they pointed that Emilio Aguinaldo would be the leader and only the one who lead them so that Emilio Aguinaldo can make a quick decision, can grant pardon and amnesty and negotiate with the foreign power so that they would fight or they can fight the against the Spanish force. So these slides illustrate the desperation and determination of the Filipino people. They move from the legal appeals from the previous slide to physical warfare with inferior weapons into this slide. It also shows the historical move toward establishing the sovereign Filipino state, which eventually lead to the proclamation of the independence in June 12, 1898. And that's all for my report. Thank you.
The Philippine flag is one of the most important symbols of the country because it represents the history, freedom, and unity of the Filipino people. Each part of the flag has a meaning that reflects the sacrifices and bravery of Filipinos during the fight for independence. The white triangle stands for equality, liberty, and fraternity. It is also connected to Katipunan, the revolutionary group that fought against Spanish rule. The three stars represents the three main island groups of the Philippines, which is the Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The sun with eight rays symbolizes freedom and the first eight provinces that started the revolution against Spain, which is the Manila, Cavite, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, Bataan, Laguna, and Batangas, Pampanga. Ah. And the blue color represents peace, truth, and justice, while the red color stands for patriotism and courage. The white color symbolizes purity and honesty. The Philippine flag reminds Filipinos of the sacrifices of their heroes who fought for the country's freedom and independence to the Spanish.
Why we should value our Independence Day. Independence Day is important because it reminds us the sacrifices and bravery of the people who fought for our country's freedom. It teaches us the value of unity, patriotism, and the rights we enjoy today. By celebrating this day, we learn to appreciate our history, respect our heroes, and become responsible citizens who help improve our nation. It also gives us the opportunity to reflect on how freedom allows us to express ourselves, pursue education, and build a better future for everyone. Commemoration of sacrifices made by our heroes and fellow countrymen who fought for our freedom. It reminds us of their courage, hard work, and willingness to risk their lives for the nation. Through this celebration, we honor their contributions and remember that the freedom we enjoy today came from the struggles and sacrifices of the past. It also inspires us to value our independence, show love for our country, and continue the legacy of unity and patriotism for future generations. Moreover, Independence Day helps strengthen our sense of national identity and pride as citizens. It encourages us to reflect on the importance of peace, democracy, and cooperation in building a better society. By remembering the lessons of history, we become more aware of our responsibilities in protecting the freedom and rights that our heroes fought hard to achieve.
Everyone, I'm Rina Jane Hironis. Today, I will be explaining the appreciation of sovereignty. The statement explains the importance or appreciation of sovereignty in a country. Sovereignty means that nation has the power to govern itself and make its own decision. When sovereignty is lost, people are no longer protected by the right given by its own nation. Instead, their actions and movements are controlled by a foreign power. This limits their freedoms and independence as citizens. Therefore, sovereignty is very important because it ensures that a country and its people can live freely and decide for themselves. That's all. Thank you. The statement reminds us to value our independence, which was achieved through the sacrifices, sweat, and blood of our heroes. It emphasizes that freedom was not easily gained, but fought for with courage and unity. The true meaning of independence lies in how we protect and use it today as citizens. We are encouraged not to take it for granted, but to appreciate its importance in our daily lives. Remembering our history help us understand the struggles of the past and inspire us to preserve our freedom. Mabuhay tayong mga Pilipino.